morning. Welcome to another edition of The Walker's Way. Today, I'm going to show you how to change out that flapper in your toilet. I'm going to show you how to determine which is the right one, how to change it out, and how to adjust it properly. I'm going to show you the fast way, the easy way, the right way, and the Walker's Way. Today I'm going to show you how to change out the flapper in your toilet. But before we do that, what is a flapper? Alright, well, inside your toilet, we got the back cut out of this toilet here. And here's a tip: do not cut the back of your toilet out. It won't hold water. Okay? We just did that to show you. Alright, so this is your flapper. It's a little thing that, well, kind of flaps up and down. What this does is this is your flush valve. Water sits in your tank, and when you hit your handle, it raises the flapper. Water gushes in through the flush valve and down into your bowl and flushes all your stuff away. And by stuff, yeah, I mean poop. Come on, we're adults, we can say poop. Poop. So anyway, water's in your tank, flush it, water goes out, flushes all your poop away. All right, so how do you know if you need a new flapper or not? Maybe it's something else that's wrong with your toilet. Okay, so here's a few tests you can do. One is the dye test. You need to find out if the flapper is actually sealing. Well, how do you perform the dye test? Well, let's jump on over to a working toilet and I'll show you how to do that. So on the dye test, what you want to do is take off the lid to your tank, throw a couple drops of food coloring in your tank. Now, don't worry about how this one looks a little different than the normal toilets. In a future video, I'm going to go over this toilet. This is a freaking awesome toilet. So we put a few drops of food coloring in there. We're going to use our Walker's Way green. And then what you want to do is just let it sit for a while, maybe 15 minutes or so. And you want to see is if the color from the food coloring shows up in your bowl. So we're going to go ahead and simulate it leaking. We'll just lift the flapper up just a hair. And you can see, let's see here, get some water. See how the green's coming through? So if after about 15 minutes or a half hour, you start seeing the food coloring in your bowl, then you know there's a problem with the seal between the flapper and the fill valve seat. Okay, so if you fail the dye test, in other words, dye is getting into your bowl, so that means water in your tank is trickling out and going out. And what happens is you'll be sitting there at night and all of a sudden you'll hear your toilet go, and yeah, I went, that's the sound it makes. So it kind of sounds like it's flushing when you didn't flush it. Okay, so water is filling up. So what's happening is water in the tank here, because the seal between your flapper and your flush valve is not sealing properly, water is trickling through there. And as water trickles in there, it trickles down to your bowl, and then the water level in your tank eventually will slowly lower. And when it gets down to a point where it drops your float to a point that it starts letting water back in, that's when you hear the sound. Okay, so you need to make sure that seal is solid. Okay, so if we put the dye in there and the dye is in the bowl, that seal is not solid. Okay, so that's how you know you're going to need a new flapper. Okay, another thing is maybe the flapper is just not opening far enough, and you need to adjust the chain. So in other words, water needs to get out of this tank and into that bowl as fast as possible and as much water as possible to flush all your poop out. Okay, so if your flapper is only opening about that far, well, obviously the water can't get out of the tank fast enough. So you need the flapper to raise as far as it can to let all that water out quickly. Okay? So if your chain is not adjusted properly, so like this one, we flush it, if you notice it stops here, but it can go all the way up to there. So it's only opening about 2/3 of the way. So you can adjust this chain to help the flapper open more. So if you look inside your tank and you flush it and you can see the flapper's just barely opening, well, that could be an indication it just needs to be adjusted. Another thing is maybe the flapper's closing too soon. So in other words, you go to flush it, and as soon as you let go of the handle, the flapper closes almost immediately. So what's happening is it's opening, some water's getting out, but then it's closing and it stops the water. So now it's not getting enough water out again. So you got three things here. You might just need to adjust the chain. You might have a bad flapper because it's not staying up, or you might have a bad flapper because it's not sealing. Now the sealing issue also might be the flush valve issue, because if the seat here is damaged, then no matter how many good flappers you put in there, it's still not going to seal. So if you need to figure out how to change out your flush valve, I got a video for that. I'll put a link at the top up here. But today we're just going to concentrate on the flapper itself. Okay? So now we need to change our flapper. Okay? We've determined either dye's getting into the bowl, or it's not staying up all the way. So we're going to go ahead and tackle those two things first. Later on, I'm going to show you how to adjust the chain properly, which is the part that everybody seems to get wrong. So as long as you adjust the chain properly, it's going to help you a lot. Now you need to ask yourself, well, which flapper do I need? Well, two things you need to look for first. One, is it a 2-inch, or two, is it a 3-inch? I believe there's some 4 inches out there also, but you're usually going to come in contact with either a 2 or 3-inch flapper. And that measurement is how big your flushway is. So your flush valve here, this opening, is at 2 inches or 3 inches apart. That's your first thing that you need to know, because if you get the wrong size, it doesn't matter if you got a really, really good flapper or not, it's not going to work. So now you know the size, how do you know which flapper to use? Well, let's take a jump on over to a big box store where I was at earlier today, and I'm going to kind of show you some of the different flappers that are available. We'll go that way again. Do you have a 2-inch flushway or a 3-inch? But it's very important. You can't put a 3-inch in a 2-inch, and you can't put a 2-inch in a 3-inch. Now, you know, a lot of the flappers will say universal on it. Universal, 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 universal. So Fluid Master down here, universal. But I'm going to tell you right now, they're not universal. So just a quick look at some of them. Most of them, you'll see it has these little tabs on here that fit over the ears on your flush valve. Now, some of them, you can see the gap between them here, but then you look at like one over here, the gap is a lot bigger. Plus it has this little black bar that goes across there. Some of them have a float. This one's red, this one's blue with a float. These are 3-inch. You notice the gap between the arms here is much bigger than the gap between this one. Okay. Here's one where the sealing part, you can adjust the amount of water that goes into the float, which makes it a little bit more universal. So they're not universal as far as they fit all 3-inch toilets, but they'll usually tell you on the back. Like this one here, it's got a little setting chart, tells you pretty much which toilets that they will fit. So this one here also, you can see it's got a adjusting ring on there, so it opens up the holes a little bit more. This one here is just a one-piece rubber. It's very flexible silicone rubber with a this here is what we call a beaded chain. I'm sorry, this is a link chain. Here's a repair kit. I don't really recommend those, but we'll talk about those in a future video. Now, if you notice this one, it doesn't have those little things that flip over the ears. It's got a ring here in the center. Some of the old flush valves didn't have those ears on them, so you have to use something like this, where this ring slid over the shaft, the overflow shaft. All right, so you saw that there's a plethora of flappers out there. Yes, plethora. We use big words on this channel, okay? All plumbers know what plethora means, but for you electricians, it means a large amount of something, okay? All right, so which flapper do you need? Well, the good thing is if you have a 2-inch flapper, I'm going to tell you your odds are greatly increased on getting the right flapper, okay? Because if you have a 2-inch flushway here, you need a 2-inch flapper, you can normally get away 9 times out of 10 with this Fluid Master flapper. It's their high-performance adjustable flapper. And I always recommend buying them in the 3-pack. They come 3 to a pack like this. You can buy them singly, 3 to a pack. You probably have more than one toilet in your house, so you might as well change them all at one time, or you're going to use them up eventually anyway. So a pack like this, I think it's like 12 US, so it's like $4 each. You can buy them individually. They're like $6.50, so if you only want to get one, still not too expensive. The nice thing about these ones is they say they're universal, and I'm going to tell you they're very universal for a 2-inch flushway. Okay? I've been installing these for over a decade, and I have never, ever once had one that wasn't compatible or didn't perform. Okay? So I keep these in the trucks. They work 99% of the time. So I would say if you have a 2-inch, go ahead and use these. And the nice thing about them is they're adjustable, so we'll get a close-up shot here. You can see on the top it says minimum and maximum. That's how long the flapper stays up. What controls the flapper staying up is this ball here on the bottom. It has air, and then when it fills full of water, water gets in that ball. Well, the more water in there, the heavier it is, and the sooner it'll drop. So when you turn this to minimum, the little weep hole here, and up here, the little weep hole, is at the top. So when you flush it and it lifts, now the drain hole's here at the top, so water can't get out as fast, so it drops faster because it's heavier. You turn it to maximum, now the weep hole's here on the side, so when you lift it, water gets out faster, and it'll stay up a little longer. So what you want is when you flush it, you want the flapper to be up, and then as the water goes out, you want the flapper to slowly go down until it seals. Okay? You don't want it flapping down right away. Here's an example of how you want it to look. When you flush it, you notice how the flapper stays up as the water is dropping, and the flapper goes down with the level of water. If you have a 3-inch flapper that you need, now your options are a little different. Most 3-inch flappers, you kind of have to have the right one. Okay? There's several out there. Some of them are, say, universal on them. They're not totally universal. They're universal in the sense that they will work on more than one toilet. And if you look at the back of the packaging that the 3-inch comes in, it'll usually tell you which toilets they work on. So which toilet do you have? Well, if you look on the back of your toilet inside the tank, so normally you'd have your back here, on the inside, printed on the tank itself on the inside will usually be the model number of the tank. And then usually on the top of your bowl over here will have the name, who manufactured it. So like if this is Glacier Bay, it'll say Glacier Bay over here, and then on the inside of the tank on the back wall, it'll have the model number. So now you know what toilet you have. You can either look it up online to see what flapper it needs, or you can just go down to your local hardware store, big box store, and find the one that's compatible with your toilet. You can also take the flapper you have down with you to match it up. The only problem is on the 3-inch flappers, it's a little hard sometimes to match them up because they all look the same. So how do you know if you got the right one? So look at the back of the packaging, make sure you get the one that is compatible with your toilet. So the 3-inch ones I've had more problems with, making sure you get the right flapper in there. There's not one that's all universal. So now how do you get your flapper off of here? Well, now here's a flush valve that's not mounted in there. So you can see the flush valve has these little ears on it. And your flapper has little arms, and they either, like in the case of this, those little hands or arms go over those and then they snap down on both sides. Okay? Some of them, they're all rubber, and you just kind of lift them off. You know, they got a hole in it instead of a clip, and that hole just kind of fits over those little ears. So they're very simple how to put them on. Okay, to get your old flapper off, just pop it off the ears, and you want to disconnect the little clip from the flush lever. So just take this off, and you can discard your old one. Now put your new one in. So let's say we're going to be using this Fluid Master one here. Take your chain, and the little clip at the top of your chain, take that clip off. Okay? So don't lose it. You're going to need that chain, or that clip. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take your flapper, mount it to your flush valve. So in this case, just put it over the ears. So it's on there. Now, the part that everybody seems to overlook, and that's the proper adjustment of the chain. So what you want to do, and I got this flush valve kind of turned just to make it a little easier to look at, but it kind of proves a point here, and it's going to depend on where on the lever you attach the chain. Because let's say we attach the chain here. Now we go to flush it, look how little it opens up the flush valve, or the flapper. But if we put it over here, now we flush it, look at that, it opens up a lot more. So it's going to determine where on the flush lever you attach it, plus the proper adjustment of this. So depending on how your flush valve is mounted, whether it's like this, or this, or this, whichever way it is, you want to get the best angle for pulling your chain. I'm pulling your chain. So in this case, we're going to put it as we already saw. Putting it up here is going to give us the best opportunity. It's going to open up the most. So we're going to put it on the second one back. So what you want to do is just take your chain with your flapper closed, take your chain and figure out where it meets that hole without any slack in there. Not so much that it starts to lift the flapper up, just to keep the flapper down and the chain right there, okay? So we already know that hole right there is where it should be. So now we take our clip, line our top of our clip to that hole, because that's where we want it to be. And now we know where the clip needs to go into. It needs to go in that ring right there. I always go one ring up just to give it a little bit of slack. You don't want too much slack, and I'll show you why in a minute. Then you want to put your clip on there. And I'm going to show you about this excess here. And now just put the clip through the hole in your flush lever. So now you see that when the flush lever is down, the flapper is completely closed. It's not so tight that the flapper is raised up, because if it is, water's going to be going out. And there's not a whole lot of slack in there. So when we start to move this lever, it's going to start moving that almost immediately. Okay? So when we flush it, you notice how it kind of pulls it all the way up. We might be able to move this out here and get a little bit more height out of it. Okay? Now, what do you do with this excess chain? You cut it off. Take a pair of diagonal cutters or tin snips or whatever and just cut that off. You don't want to leave that excess on there, because what happens is you go to flush it, as it's starting to drop, that chain gets sucked in with all the water into your fill valve, and now when you close it, the chain is underneath the flapper, and it creates a little gap there, so water keeps going in there, and it's never going to seal. So you don't want that. The same thing is when you put the chain on, if the chain's too loose, it could flip over and get underneath the flapper. So just enough slack that as soon as you start to lift it, it'll start to lift the flapper. Okay? Not so much that the flapper's up at all, so just a tiny bit of gap in there. That's the proper way to adjust your chain. Okay? Okay? Now if you got a 3-inch flapper, same thing, it's going to go over your ears. You're going to adjust your chain exactly the same way, but if it's one of those universal ones, look on the back of the packaging. It'll tell you what setting, because usually around the flapper, it'll have a adjustment ring on there, and it'll tell you what setting to put it at for your kind of toilet. If you can't find your toilet on there and it seems to kind of be working, you can play with the settings, keep trying them until you find the one that works. So that's it. That's how you put a flapper in. So, like I said, if you need to figure out how to change your flush handle here, we've got a link up above to show you how to do that. Otherwise, you're all set. I hope the information in my video helped you complete your project. And if you like the content I'm putting out there, go ahead and flap that thumbs up like button down below. And while you're down there, go ahead and subscribe. In the meantime, I got a couple other videos over here that maybe you might be interested in. And good luck with your project.